Another year of video gaming is over, so now it is time to share my thoughts on the best games I played over 2024. My focus on this channel is Nintendo, but I'm not exclusive to the company and their games. I try to play as many titles from as many developers and publishers as possible, which this year has worked out quite well, because, to be honest, Nintendo's output wasn't as strong as it was in 2023. They still released some fantastic games, mind you, but what this means for this year's list is, rather than split it between my top 5 third parties and top 5 Nintendo games, this year's list will instead be combined into a top 10, with some honourable mentions. 2 points to note before we get into this list. I'm not going to be giving a proper review for each of these games in this video, as some of them I've given full reviews for already over on Source Gaming, and we'll link to those in the comments if you want to hear more from me about them. And lastly, I am only one person, one with a full-time job who also writes and edits videos in his spare time. It's a miracle I can even find the time to make videos sometimes, to be honest. What this means is that I haven't played every game that was released this year, and some notable ones that I missed out on include Balatro, Metaphor, ReFantasio, Dragon Quest III 2D HD, Anton Blast, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Infinite Wealth. So, if a game you loved this year doesn't make it onto this year's list, it's not a sign that I think it isn't worthy. There's just a chance I never got the chance to play it. Anyway, that's enough preamble. Let's get on with the countdown. First up, we have a game that, had you told me about last year, I wouldn't have ever thought would have made my top 10. But lo and behold, Sunsoft's sequel to its cult classic Euphoria the Saga came into my life with a splash early in the year, and instantly made me fall in love with the series. The whole game feels like a Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon show come to life, or with a gorgeous felt visual style reminiscent of Yoshi's Crafted World. Hebe, the game's penguin protagonist, is peak character design, and all of his friends are super charming, adding a ton of whimsy to this rather simple roguelike title. Beginning from Hebe's house, players have to work their way to the end of a biome that randomly shifts its 4 sections every time you enter it. All this to collect coins that you can use to upgrade your abilities, complete challenges, and beat bosses. It was a joy to play through, and it made me go back and check out the rest of the series available on Nintendo Switch. Shout out to Hebe Reke, the original game that Sunsoft also added to the eShop shortly after the sequel's release. That game might be the perfect Metroidvania, but it's also a game from 1991, so I can't include it within this top 10. Next up, we have a game I imagine most of you here have never heard of. Starstruck The Hands of Time is an indie adventure rhythm game that squarely falls into the Earthbound-like genre. What makes it stand out is the rhythm-based combat system that primarily pulls from Guitar Hero, to the point that it can even be played with a Guitar Hero guitar. Also, there are parts where you play as a giant hand and destroy as much as possible. Neat. The game is odd and quirky, with multiple protagonists and a poignant story centered around fame and jealousy, and how that can ruin people. It's all presented in this gorgeous claymation style, with multimedia cutscenes that jump between in-game sections, stock footage, and live action to get across the bizarre feeling. It's one of the few games on this list that I can say I played multiple times through in order to see everything it had to offer, and I don't regret any of it. Currently, the game is only available on PC, but I hope to see it come to more platforms in the future. The first Nintendo game to make this list should be no surprise for watchers of this channel. The newest entry in Nintendo's Famicom Detective Club series was the biggest surprise launch of this year, with just over a month of build-up from announcement to launch. The the 2 remakes prior were great, but definitely showed their age in places, such as puzzle solutions and gameplay flow. And so I am happy to say that MAO fixes all of these issues and then some. Even though the gameplay is a lot of talking and going through menus, there was never a point where I felt lost about what to do next. But of course, the story is the main reason to play a game like this, and for the most part, MAO tells an engaging mystery story that has you asking questions by the end of its spectacular epilogue. If you want to hear extended thoughts of mine on this game though, you can check out the story discussion that I did over on the Source Gaming channel. Be warned though, it does contain spoilers. As a child of the early noughts, Super Monkey Ball was a favourite series of mine, but as we got into the Wii era, the series had lost some of its magic. The new art style wasn't as good, the level design wasn't as strong, and the physics had been changed to work better for the Wii's motion controls, but it didn't result in a better feeling game. It was a bitter feeling, but after a decade and a half, Super Monkey Ball fever is back. Yes, we did have Banana Mania a few years ago, but a lot of that was recycled content in a new engine that wasn't quite made for those stages. But here, all the levels have been designed with the new physics in mind. Add on to this the fantastic addition of a spin dash, and you get some high-speed monkey rolling action. The new art style and customization options were also a welcome addition. I think my only complaint really is the lack of a good multiplayer versus mode. But the co-op main game is a solid inclusion, allowing my friends and I to tackle some of the hardest levels in the game together. I'm happy to see this franchise return in such a strong way, and I look forward to seeing what Sega has in store for these lovely rolling monkeys in the future. The final game in the Mario RPG Renaissance, Brothership is a special game, as it was the only one of the 3 major RPG series to actually be an entirely new entry. And it was a very strong new entry, only let down by a really bad first impression. The beginning of this game has terrible pacing, but if you push through it and get to the second sea, it becomes a far more enjoyable experience. As the first game in the series to not be made by Alpha Dream, there were a lot of changes made in Brothership to the status quo. It's the first game in 3D, the first to not have Yoko Shimura as composer, it changes up the way progression works with its island hopping mechanic, and it changes up the combat, for the better. Many of these changes are subjective in whether they are improvements or not, but it is very hard to argue that the combat in this game isn't the best in the series. The addition of battle plugs provides more tactical options to combat, and Luigi logic moments help to make boss battles unique compared to regular or mini-boss matches. But the best part about the game is easily the visual upgrade. As I said a moment ago, this is the first game to be in 3D, and the team took full advantage of this with cinematic camera angles on cutscenes and some boss battles, and the translation of Mario and Luigi's over-the-top expressions into these new visuals was done immaculately. This is easily the best Mario and Luigi have ever looked. Not just in the Mario and Luigi series, but the whole Super Mario franchise. Alright, let's take a quick intermission to highlight some games from previous years that I only got to for the first time this year. And starting us off, we have Persona 5 Tactica and its DLC Repaint Your Heart. This was actually the first game I played this year, and it was a really solid strategy game. It did a fantastic job of bringing over the Persona mechanics into the world of strategy RPGs. While its early levels are a bit slow, once the story picks up it becomes very interesting, and I was not expecting to like the new characters as much as I did. Looking over to the world of indie games, Tinykins was another early title in the year, and one that I enjoyed more than I expected to. The same can be said for Cavern of Dreams, a traditional Nintendo 64 style platformer that I initially didn't enjoy when I played the demo, but the full game completely won me over with its refinedness, yet faithfulness to Nintendo 64 era platforming. Tinykins is also a platformer, but one that combines Pikmin-like mechanics to more modern 3D platformer sensibilities to make a pretty massive and fun to explore game. Finally, handing the ball over to Nintendo for a moment, I played Animal Crossing Pocket Camp for the first time this year, right after they announced its end of service, and enjoyed it way more than I expected to. The game might be on mobile, but it has a lot of the features I really wish New Horizons had, like actual missions from villagers and a reason to craft furniture beyond display purposes. It's not a sandbox game like the main series, but instead a more focused and objective-driven experience, which I really appreciated. A good thing they launched the complete edition earlier this month, so anyone can still play it if they choose to. Okay, now back to the top 10. This may come as a shock to some of you, given I am the Nintendo Chronicler, but 5th place is the last Nintendo game on this list. But what a good one to end on. Echoes of Wisdom is Nintendo taking the open nature of the Wild duology and applying it to a 2D game. And what I appreciate here is that they didn't go all the way. Echoes of Wisdom feels more in line with A Link Between Worlds than it does Tears of the Kingdom, and not because of the top-down view. You can't tackle the game in any order. The player is still limited in where they can go and what is available to them, even if the game is now technically open world and that there are choices in how you approach it. And the classic dungeon formula is back in full force, even if some of the dungeons are a little plain. One thing I really appreciated about Echoes of Wisdom is how it was willing to pull aspects from across the Zelda series and make a definitive Zelda aesthetic. The map is loosely based on A Link to the Past, but expanded out with new areas based on the locations from Twilight Princess and Breath of the Wild. The core Ocarina of Time races return, and in the case of the Zora, it even hammers home the fact that there are 2 types. Really, it only feels like it's missing the Rito tribe. If it had this, it could have been the definitive Zelda world, but it's a step in the right direction, in my opinion, and I hope to see Grezzo make more Zelda games like this in the future. With better menu UI, please. I'm not a massive horror game fan, but I do like Resident Evil, and I also love anything with a retro aesthetic, so Crow Country had my immediate interest when I saw it, and I was not wrong to be excited by it. Crow Country was a visually incredible game with a real sense of foreboding and mystery behind the titular theme park. The way the game builds up suspense and how the park gets more dangerous the further into the game you go is enough to fill anyone with dread and a sense of hesitation. Once you've begun to master the gameplay and understand its world, repeated playthroughs become a test of speed and memory. How fast can you get through the game and get to its ending? There aren't many games I'm willing to speedrun, heck, there aren't many games I'm willing to replay, but Crow Country I beat 3 times back to back, improving my time and getting as many collectibles as I could on my way to 100%. I was fully motivated to master this game, and began plotting optimal routes across the park to pick up as many upgrades and secrets as I could in the shortest time possible. Crow Country was just a ton of fun, and even now I'm sometimes tempted to pick it up again just for the vibes, to explore this haunted park and soak in the atmosphere. Something the game allows me to do without fear thanks to an optional mode that removes all the enemies from the game and just gives the player the story. So even big wusses like me can enjoy it. I played Persona 3 Portable on Nintendo Switch after everyone told me that Persona 3 was the series' best entry, and, well, I'm sure they meant Fez when they said that. I was very let down by Portable. It's just got boring and felt very archaic, but Persona 3 Reload let me experience the source that Persona 3 fans felt with modern sensibilities, and I loved it for it. This was my game of the year for most of 2024, and while some of that might be because I spent over 100 hours on it, it's definitely the game I put the most time into this year. I like to think that it's the quality of the gameplay, aesthetics, narrative and characters that got me to that 100 hours. I get the Aegis hype now. While Persona 3 Reload did remove some gameplay features and made some visual changes from the original that I know fans weren't happy with, as someone coming into this basically new, Persona 3 Reload felt like a great follow-up to Persona 5. Not an evolution, mind you, I still think the general story flow and dungeons of Persona 5 are better than the slow early game and Tartarus of Persona 3, but by the end of Persona 3 Reload, I was completely on board with what it was offering me, more so than I was for Persona 5, and it was great to experience the story that justified the massive gameplay shift the series took from 2 to 3. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is a tragic game, as it's one of the best Metroidvanias I have ever played, and it has not got the success and recognition it deserves. That seems to happen to all the Ubisoft games I like. Phoenix Rising was also a really high quality game that audiences didn't give the time of day to, but I digress. What makes The Lost Crown stand out is its high quality character action combat combined with fantastically flowing movement options that take the player across its massive labyrinth of a world. Supporting this gameplay are a plethora of customization options, from equipable relics to movement and attack upgrades, as one would expect from this genre. Honestly, I'm struggling a bit to really describe what The Last Crown does right. It just felt enjoyable to play, and it pushed me to 100% completion. Successfully working through some of its hardest challenges was super satisfying, and the story has some real highlight moments that kept me engaged. I walked away putting this game on par with the likes of Symphony of the Night and Hollow Knight, which should say all it needs to for its quality. But it's not number one, and before we get to number one, let's cover some honourable mentions. Mario & Luigi Brothership made the top 10, but Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door HD was pretty close. It is still the best Paper Mario game, and this remake improves in every way over the GameCube original. The main thing that kept it out of the top 10 was that it was a remake, so really it doesn't feel like this is the first time I have played it. And also in 2024, there are just some aspects of the game that really show its age, mainly the world design. It's not great, especially compared to Origami King. And while we're talking about great games showing their age, Sonic X Shadow Generations made me feel like a kid again. Shadow is just so cool, and everything in the Shadow Generations section of the title was worthy of putting into the top 10. Unfortunately, it is a little short, and I think the Sonic Generations part of the game really hasn't aged that well. The classic Sonic sections are lacking compared to Sonic Mania, and Planet Wisp is still an absolutely awful level, regardless of which style you play. Plus, the less said about the final boss, the better. Shadow's boss battles were at least epic and cool. More of that, please. When it comes to fighting games, I am really bad, except for when it comes to Tekken 8, where I like to think I am passable. So I really enjoyed Tekken 8. It did a lot to help a less competitive player like myself, and managed to avoid the fighting game sin of having little content for casuals. Tekken 8 is jam-packed with stuff to do, from all the arcade story modes to the main campaign to its meta-breaking side storyline. Tekken 8 does a lot to support all kinds of players, and I really appreciated that. Speaking of fighting, Decline's Drops is Super Smash Bros, but turned into an actual 2D platforming adventure. Basically, what if Subspace Emissary, but with good level design? Couple that with fantastic hand-drawn graphics and a soundtrack that, while a bit out of place early on, gets really solid the further into the game you go, and you've got a game that is enjoyable on all fronts. I was excited for Decline's Drops, and I wasn't disappointed, but it did just miss out on getting into the top 10. Lastly, I'm really enjoying Pokemon TCG Pocket, way more than I thought I would. I like collecting cards, and the changes made to the Pokemon TCG format to make matches quicker and simpler really works. I can pick and play a quick game online in just a couple minutes, and I like that, even if the meta is so busted right now that you'll likely only ever play against the same 4 decks over and over and over again. Okay, it's time for number 1. I was not expecting to play Astrobot, this year's Game of the Year winner at both the Game Awards and the more prestigious Chronicler Award. Yes, that's what I'm calling this video now. And that's because I don't have a PS5. But I got lucky over the holidays and managed to borrow one and the game for a week, and man, I was blown away. Obviously, I like platformers, and Astrobot taking so much from the Mario Galaxy playbook is very appealing to me. But dare I say that Astrobot just did it better? The gameplay mechanics, the level design and theming, the tight control scheme, it's an incredible achievement, and that alone puts it up there as a Game of the Year contender. What pushed it over the edge for me, and likely many others, is part of the game that's more of a feeling than an objective gameplay mechanic. To me, Astrobot is a game that was made by people who love video games. Developers who love the entire medium, the idea of what a game is, and how games connect to people. The feeling I got from playing Astrobot was that Team Asobi fully understands why video games are special, and it was enough to pull me out of a bit of a slump and remind me why I love playing video games. And yes, the countless references to Sony and its history and IP do play a factor in this. There is just something special about seeing all these stupid little bots in full cosplay, flying on ships based on the generation of hardware that their inspiration debuted on. There's an attention to detail in these cameos that I've not even seen from actual crossover games like Super Smash Bros., but all are details that fans of these series would immediately notice and enjoy. It's just a really enjoyable game, and while I'm still not sold on getting a PS5 myself, if Sony can deliver more games like Astrobot and Astro's Playroom, which deserves a shout out as well, as I played that just before Astrobot and it was also really good. Games that exist to be video games and take advantage of what the medium can offer, then I might actually consider it. And that does it for my list of the top games in 2024, and does it for the year of 2024. Nintendo was pretty slow this year, all things considered, even if we did get several entries from obscure titles like Another Code and Endless Ocean, and you can check out videos on those games after this one, as I did very deep dives into both series earlier this year, and I think they came out great. Of course, if you want more top 10s, then why not check out my 2023 awards video instead? A link to all of these will be in the end card and description. This won't be my last 2024 based video, by the way. We still have the Nintendo in 2024 video, which will be coming out soon, so I look forward to seeing all of you again when that drops in early 2025.